Doug Simon from Tredas is our corn and soybean market analyst this week. The U.S. Department of Agriculture on Wednesday projected American farmers will produce nearly 14.3 billion bushels of corn and almost 4.3 billion bushels of soybeans. The estimates are slightly higher than the agency's earlier forecast and helped cool commodity markets that had been pushed higher with the help of warmer weather. The July soybean futures contract on Monday settled above $10 a bushel for the first time since March, and July corn after Monday's close was its highest since February. We talked with Doug Wednesday afternoon and began by asking about the current condition of crops across Nebraska.
Well, we had a drop in the corn crop in Nebraska last week and also in the soybean crop, and not only in Nebraska but across the country. And we've had some pretty good rains over the 4th of July, time period in kind of the Lancaster, Cass County area and over in Iowa, but that's definitely not indicative of what's going on in the state. It continues to be dry out in western Nebraska and up in the northern part of Nebraska. We've had some good rain, the other night up by Norfolk and up toward Battle Creek and down in that neck of the woods, an inch to inch and a half down by West Point. And we had a little bit, even I think last night, up in Saunders County. So there's some areas that are getting some low rains. Kind of the way the weather conditions, there's a lot of debate about what's going on in the models. We're starting to see some of those monsoon rains coming out of the southwest here the last couple days. Hopefully we'll get some more of those going forward, but right now the conditions are pretty tough.
Nationwide, have the conditions been bad enough to affect overall production?
I think when you look at the Dakotas, you look up there, they've had really, really dry conditions. You look at their percent of normal precip is low. You look at their temperatures, they've been high. And I think if you look at a cut of maybe 20% of the production up there, there's about 200 million bushels that could come out of the U.S. production because of that area. There's areas in northern Indiana, which Indianapolis, I guess that's north central, that have had too much rain early on. We had multiple replantings there, and now we've had ongoing rain, so there's issue there. Talked to another analyst that I know and work with in Evansville, thinks his crop's pretty good in that area. There's parts of Iowa, parts of Illinois that are below normal as well, so there's definitely some areas that are struggling to have the moisture that they need to have a record crop.
Were there any major takeaways from today's WASDE, do you think?
They didn't change the U.S. yields on corn or beans. They don't typically do that in July. Might do it in August potentially, but really I would think that stuff would be down the road as we get to know a little bit more about the crop and the weather. On the wheat, the numbers there were a little bit maybe actually higher than what the average guess was, and so, but I think people are expecting maybe to see more abandonment up in the spring wheat areas. And really that spring wheat's been the thing that's been a real rocket ship and taken off and given support to both the corn and the beans. If you look at the other numbers there wasn't really anything too terribly new. The big deal is that we saw a big increase in the world carryout of corn, but that was really essentially because we had more corn acres in the U.S., bigger carryovers from last year. And so you add 6 million metric tons to the world numbers, and to the carry-in and also to the actual carryover. And that might have been a little bit more than people expect and a little bit negative for the corn market.
What is the overall strategy that you want producers to use with as much volatility as we have seen?
It's how we always like to look at the market more from a bigger picture and trying to predict weather day in and day out. Every 6 hours a new weather model comes out, Canadian, American, European, and they've got a new American model. If you want to try to base decisions on that, I think it's pretty tough. So we always try to focus on pre-harvest marketing. We want to sell February through June, sell increments over time. And then question is, you want to do that in concert, consistent with your crop insurance value or the amount of quantity that you're going to have there. But if you're worried about prices going higher, or if you think you're going to have dry land yields are going to be low, if you want to have some upside, you can use some things through options. Actually, options are pretty inexpensive. I shouldn't say inexpensive, but the volatility is low right now. It's running about 10 points below normal. So actually to go out and buy calls or something like that to go with hedges is a good way, as a strategy you can put in place that gives you some flexibility.
You said that basis, before we talked here, you said that basis might be a key to look at here if production is affected to the north. Why?
I think so. We always talk about futures, basis, carry. Those are the three important things you do, I think, to be successful from a marketing standpoint. But if you take 200 million bushels of production out of the Dakotas, we saw a lot of corn that flows, from that area into Nebraska over the last few years. We've also seen corn that comes out of northern Kansas into Nebraska. If you have reduced crops, we'll see less corn coming in from those markets. You see that especially over in the Columbus and the markets over at Blair, where we get trucks coming down from the Dakotas. We won't see that. I think that'll help our basis here. And then also if our dryland production in Nebraska, instead of being 200 bushels versus a 160 APH, if this year is closer to that APH, you don't have as much that larger production in that eastern Nebraska, western Iowa. So I think our basis level should be much better next year. So we definitely, from a hedging standpoint, we want to hedge and look at trading that basis later.